If I were to talk about what my favorite game genre of all time was, I would honestly have to say the horror genre, specifically survival horror. I'm not talking about those Outlast slop clones that you can only play through once because it's just set piece after set piece with you running away from brain dead AI. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I don't really like Outlast. The horror games I'm talking about are the ones where you're given finite resources, as well as an actual weapon allowing you to fight back against the monsters, which could be argued is actually scarier than being automatically defenseless, because if you run out of ammo due to being careless, that's on you, and that fear you feel hits even harder because you don't know how much ammo you're gonna have before a combat encounter, and it makes every single one completely unpredictable. Now, if I were to talk about which game within this genre is the best in my eyes, you'd probably expect me to say Resident Evil or Silent Hill. Well, my personal favorite is actually one that combines elements from both of them, and that game is The Evil Within. Which, if you're a first-time viewer, you're probably thinking, wait, isn't The Evil Within that one horror game that nobody really liked when it came out? And if you were asking that, then yes, you're absolutely correct. But over time, people have started to warm up to it, and personally, I think it could be considered amongst the ranks of Resident Evil and Silent Hill in terms of its quality, which makes it even more of a shame that Microsoft shut down the studio that made it. The Resident Evil comparison to The Evil Within comes from the fact that it was directed by Shinji Mikami, who is known for his work on absolute horror classics like Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4, and of course we can't forget Goof Troop on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. That one's a real knee trembler, let me tell you. The Evil Within plays exactly like your standard over-the-shoulder Resident Evil game. You'll be aiming down your sights and missing 3/4 of your shots due to the immense amount of fear you're feeling during combat encounters. Now, the Silent Hill comparison comes in from the psychological horror side of The Evil Within. Both of these games take place in a hellscape with horrific monsters which are based around events, feelings, and trauma of a specific person, allowing them to go absolutely crazy with the monster designs. I think this combination of these two games is absolutely perfect, and it's one of the main reasons as to why I love The Evil Within. That and it was one of the first horror games I ever finished, so I guess I'm just kind of biased really. The Evil Within was the first ever game created by the newly formed studio Tango Gameworks. May they rest in peace. And you can kinda tell playing through it because it's a bit jank in places. But despite the blatant flaws, it was made by people who were very passionate about not just the horror genre, but games as a whole, and you can tell. The overarching plot of the game and where it takes place allows the developers and level designers to take full advantage of the fact that The Evil Within is a game. They take full advantage of this, pulling off some of the trippiest, strangest shit that can only be experienced in this form of media. It's full of moments where you're taken into completely random places by, for example, falling through a hospital corridor, taking a lift to the top of a city that forgets it's floating in the air and falls down. Honestly, I could go on about the crazy transitions this game has. While playing through it, you have no idea why all of this shit is happening, and it was one of the main criticisms for The Evil Within. Personally though, I loved it. Every chapter felt like a complete surprise. You had no idea where you were going to be trudging through shitting yourself next. You constantly feel clueless throughout it, just like the main character you're playing as, Sebastian, who is my favourite survival horror protagonist of all time, in terms of his design at least. I absolutely love how he looks, and it's actually criminal that he isn't in a game like Dead by Daylight. If fucking Nick Cage can be in it, why can't Sebastian, huh? Well, this gruff, middle-aged man was another problem people had with The Evil Within back in the day. They weren't too happy about the fact that Sebastian wasn't exactly expressive, like, in the slightest. The only expression he ever showed with his animations and voice lines was just sheer confusion. Sometimes he even sounded completely bored.
What the fuck?
It's obvious the voice direction was not great because Sebastian's voice actor is an actual professional actor called Anson Mount, who is known for his incredible acting in Hood of Horror, starring Snoop Dogg.
The Hound of Hell has returned, and all is not good in the hood.
I personally don't mind his rough voice acting at all. You can't have a good horror game without a bit of cheese and stupid ass lines.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
And The Evil Within does not disappoint. I actually find myself quoting a lot of the stupid shit Sebastian says while experiencing this insane shit.
Fire seems to work.
Another complaint people had about the guy was the fact we don't actually learn much about him in the story. We get hints that he's an alcoholic and something pretty tragic happened to him in the past, causing him to lose his wife and daughter, but none of it is told to us directly. We have to learn it through notes we find around the world, which is pretty stupid, I'll admit, but this lack of character for Sebastian feels deliberate. It lets us, the player, put ourselves into his shoes. The confusion he's feeling throughout the story is the exact same confusion we're feeling too. We're just as out of the loop as he is, because the evil within isn't actually about him at all. The story is more focused around almost every other character, because Sebastian wasn't even supposed to be pulled into the current situation he's in. Even the main villain sees him as a waste of time for the most part during the early game, only really taking him seriously the further in we get. Every other character has about 20 times more personality than Sebastian. For starters, we have the two officers who are accompanying him to the crime scene that starts all of this madness. Joseph Oda and Julie Kidman. Oh, and I guess the guy who drove them there, but he doesn't last too long.
What the fuck?
Joseph is Seb's partner, and just like him, he's completely out of the loop of what's going on too, and he's also suffering from some serious mental torment with moments where he says shit like this.
You ever had the urge to just jump? When you're on a high place? Or the subway rolls by?
I'm very mixed on him personally. I think he could have been great, but he's severely underutilized within the story. We're with him for like 2 chapters and then he vanishes, but we do meet him again later just for him to get shot, and that's the end of his story. We're told he survives the gunshot in the second game, so there was a lot of potential there for a third game to expand on him, but no. We live in this timeline, don't we? Unlike Seb and Joseph, Julie Kidman knows exactly what's going on, as she's undercover looking for a patient at the mental asylum known as Leslie. You don't quite fully understand any of this within the main story because you're playing from Sebastian's perspective, but in the DLCs you see everything from Kidman's perspective. But I'll get to them in another video where I go into each DLC of The Evil Within. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see that. The other 2 characters I haven't mentioned yet are Dr. Marcelo Jimenez and Ruvik. I'll talk more about Jimenez in a bit, but Ruvik is important because he's the main villain of The Evil Within, and everything we're seeing within The Evil Within is actually taking place within his brain. Let me explain what I mean. All of the horrific nightmares you're experiencing are taking place within a simulation referred to as STEM. It's a system that allows multiple minds to be brought together and connected to create a mishmash world created from memories. The way you can gain access to the STEM world is by laying in a strange bathtub referred to as a terminus, or by being connected wirelessly through a frequency, which is what happens to Sebastian and the others at the start. There's more to it though. The STEM system was originally designed by Ruvik. He made STEM as a way for him to relive and have control of his past memories due to a tragic incident, killing his sister Laura in a barn fire, as well as severely burning him and giving him a good old dose of trauma. During his time developing STEM, he kills his parents as a strategic way to inherit their fortune, and he would use that fortune to fund Beacon Mental Hospital so they would send him patients to use as test subjects for the STEM system. Marcelo Jimenez took an interest in Ruvik's project and exposed it to a big shady organization known within the universe as Mobius. They wanted to use it for their own shady purposes, and Ruvik knew this, making it so the machine could only work with his brain as the core hosting the memories within the system. He thought this would prevent anyone from stealing STEM, but it kinda made shit worse for the guy because Mobius decided to counter this by just cutting the guy up and shoving his brain in there so they could have access to it. After this event, Mobius found out that Ruvik lived on within the STEM system because people they were sending into it were just getting murdered on sight, and if you die within STEM, you die in real life. They wanted to replace Ruvik's brain as the host, and to do this they looked into patients that had similar brain waves relating to trauma they had experienced in their lives, and the one that was the closest to Ruvik's was Leslie Withers, who had witnessed his entire family get killed. Leslie was used frequently as a test subject by Jimenez, and he was able to navigate around STEM freely due to the similar brainwave patterns as Ruvik. Jimenez starts creating his own version of STEM in the background that could pull people in wirelessly, which is what is activated during the beginning, causing all of the shit we experience within the game. Ruvik knows about Leslie's similar brainwave patterns, and he guides him through STEM because he can use him as a way to escape the system within Leslie's body. Mobius knew Jimenez would foolishly pull everyone into STEM wirelessly, which is why they sent in their double agent, Julie Kidman acting as an undercover cop, bringing Sebastian and Joseph along with her, being unaware of everything. It's like a wild goose chase. Everyone within STEM is trying to get to Leslie, but Ruvik is the only one who manages to succeed in the end, and Kidman notices the influence he gains over Leslie throughout the game, so her goal turns into killing him to prevent Ruvik from getting back into the real world. While in STEM, Jimenez wants to get out too, and he tries getting to Leslie to use him as a gateway out of STEM, and Sebastian just wants to protect the poor kid because, well, he's a detective, he's just doing his job, and he's completely out of the loop of what's going on. All of that was a very basic summary of the plot, but I think this setup is absolutely genius for a horror game. The fact it's all taking place within a literal psychopath's mind lets them go absolutely insane with the monster designs. They don't hold back. Some of these are very fucked up. Every single one is based around an aspect of Ruvik's past and trauma, or they're relating to a certain patient's mental issues that unfortunately died within STEM. For starters, we have the Haunted, which act as your basic zombie type enemies. These are previous victims of STEM, and with their design you can see how much torment and pain they went through here, with some of them being covered in barbed wire or impaled with shards of glass. I love them in a fucked up kind of way. There are these bigger fucked up mutated looking enemies called the Alter Ego, which were victims that suffered from dissociative identity disorder, where it looks like them and their other identity have both simultaneously mutated and melded together. It's a horrific sight. That's only an example of the basic enemies. The boss's designs are like 20 times more horrific. Like Laura, this spindly specimen is supposed to be Ruvik's deceased sister. This is how he pictures her in his brain. What the fuck? She crawls along the floor groaning. It's so creepy. It reminds me a lot of The Grudge, which is a horror film I'm actually too afraid to watch. So obviously, to this day, Laura still scares me, especially when she does her fast scuttle. Fuck, go away. What doesn't help is the fact she is basically unkillable for the most part. You may think you've gotten her, but she's merely taking a nap, because she's always gonna come back and bash your fucking skull in. She is a powerhouse and is borderline indestructible. And if it wasn't for her weakness, that being the thing that killed her originally, fire, she would be an unstoppable force. Due to Ruvik's trauma from the barn fire, almost every single enemy and boss is weak to fire, which is where the match mechanic comes in handy. Once you knock down an enemy, or you're near a body, you're able to burn it with a match, igniting it and anything around it, which for normal Haunted is a one-shot kill. It's a very interesting mechanic. It pushes you to think more strategically with your shots, like maybe shooting a group of Haunted in the legs with your shotgun, so you can kill them all with one match rather than the usual headshot go-to. You save a lot of bullets doing this. It's a really good mechanic, and I love how it's contextualized within the world. Now, I can't talk about the combat of the Evil Within without mentioning the iconic Agony crossbow. This thing at a first glance doesn't seem that great. It has the least amount of ammo of any gun, and it's a crossbow. Why would you use this over, you know, an actual gun? Well, the Agony crossbow's unique element is the fact it has multiple bolts that can completely range in what they do. You have things like your standard bolt that impales enemies, an explosive bolt which can stick to enemies, and there's the free stunning bolts, which at a first glance you'll think are completely useless because stunning enemies doesn't do damage. Well, here's the thing. With the flash bolts, while the enemies are blinded, you can perform a one-shot stealth kill from the front. This also works on some bosses. The shock bolt makes Haunted kneel down on the ground, allowing you to drop a match on their heads, and the ice bolt literally makes them fall apart after freezing them. If you know how to utilize these bolts effectively, they can become absolutely busted, and they are essential on higher difficulties, especially Akumu. I can say this because I have my PTSD receipt. When killing enemies and bosses, there's a chance for them to drop this strange bubbling green goop. You can also find this stuff in jars scattered around, and this is what I like to refer to as green gel. With this unknown substance, you can actually upgrade Sebastian's stats through, a form of electric shock therapy, I think. It doesn't look very pleasant. The way you can access this chair is by traversing to a safe room. This safe room can be accessed through cracked mirrors throughout the fucked up world of STEM. You know you're near one when you can hear Claire de Lune faintly playing. I love this shit so much. You just cannot beat this atmosphere. It's hauntingly beautiful. If you don't hear the music at first, you can always tell there's a mirror leading to a safe room if the door has a giant Beacon Mental Hospital logo slapped onto it. This logo being on the doors is for a reason, as the safe rooms themselves are actually an area that was in the asylum, and there's even a nurse lurking around who treats you like you're a patient. This was actually where Leslie was treated. That exact chair where you level up is exactly where he had his electric shock therapy, and the nurse was the one caring for him. This safe area is here for a reason. Due to Leslie's similar brainwaves to Ruvik, he's able to create this safe haven away from everything horrific, and he must have taken a liking to Sebastian because he's the only one who's able to get access to this area. However, the place slowly starts to break down the closer Ruvik gets to taking over Leslie. The further into the game you get, there are random moments that can occur, like Ruvik forcing Sebastian out of there by using a fake version of Leslie with a mirror on his face, to even transforming the area entirely to a catacomb you'll be seeing later within the game. Not to mention how much it breaks down, and you see it all visually with the wallpaper cracking and peeling with random debris scattered around. During the final chapter, the end room just ceases to exist entirely. What I just described is one of the main reasons why I love The Evil Within. The game is not about Sebastian. He technically isn't even the main character if you really think about it. Everyone else around him pulling the strings are. Throughout everything, we are just as clueless as Sebastian, and he's literally nothing within the world. If it wasn't for his training within the Force, he would be killed incredibly quickly, and you really feel that within STEM. The game's difficulty, even on normal, is very challenging. You can be killed insanely fast if you slip up even in the slightest. While it can get frustrating at times, and I know it's an issue a lot of people had with the game, I personally love it. It makes you as Sebastian feel like you're nothing, like the odds are severely stacked against you, truly enhancing the horrifying threats you have to face. I just adore this shit, man, and I truly believe that The Evil Within is one of the best games ever made.
Are you injured? What happened here?
Can't be real.
Find myself within darkness twisting